Today, we'll be exploring email security with our head of managed services and our partner, Sendmarc. Let's face it, we've all received that email about a long-lost Nigerian prince or a mysteriously wealthy relative who's left us millions. It's enough to make you question your own sanity, right? But behind the absurdity of spam lies a serious issue: email security. Today, we're going to cut through the noise and focus on what really matters: protecting your business and ensuring your emails actually reach your customers. As always, please make use of the Q&A feature, and we will ensure that all of your questions are answered by the end of the session. Great. I hope you have a fresh cup of tea or coffee. Let's get started. And please note that the session is being recorded. Over to you guys.
Thank you, Sugeshni. And yeah, definitely welcome to everyone else. And thanks for making time on a Wednesday at lunchtime to listen about DMARC. I mean, it's hopefully a captivating subject that we want to touch on. And I think Sugeshni made a great point this morning. I'm pretty disappointed that all the thousands of dollars I've donated is not going to bring my friends back from Mars, which is a little bit disappointing. But I think what this webinar is aiming to show is just the extent at which these things get to. And it's far worse than just the long-lost Nigerian prince and people on Mars that need your help. So as the title kind of explains here, there's a new world of email security, right? Like there's things going on, at light speed at the moment. There's the introduction of large language models and AI and all these buzzwords that are making people kind of reassess the security landscape they play in. And something that I think is often overlooked is this acronym called DMARC. And Mohammed and I have been discussing this for the longest time. Is like, what is the necessity for DMARC? Often we chat to customers and they've never even heard of DMARC. And I know many of you guys will have heard of this before, but I think diving a little bit into its business function, its security function, and its application is giving people a clearer understanding of what it actually does, right? It's not just a bunch of complex acronyms that do things on the periphery of our security stacks. It's actually a business requirement that's becoming like a global standard, and much quicker than we anticipated. So, as Sugeshni mentioned, my name is Dwayne Nicol. I look after the African business for Sendmarc, and it's one of my missions in life is to kind of share the evangelism side of DMARC and why it's so important for customers, just to take a little glimpse into what it actually adds as business value. And then if there are any questions today that with anything, we're going to keep it very high level. I'm not going to dive into the nitty-gritty of email. I'm sure most of us understand that. But if there are any questions and you want to unpack one or two things, please feel free to give us a chat or a Q&A, and Mo and I will most certainly look to answer those at the end or as we go along. So guys, the theme of today is to talk about the vulnerability, right? Like a lot of the times when we talk security, people think immediately like, oh, it's another cybersecurity service that's going to protect. But there's also business value around DMARC that we want to uncover with you guys today. And the vulnerability is not just about how vulnerable am I to certain things on the internet, it's also how vulnerable are my customers. And avoiding awkward conversations for me is one of the primary drivers of speaking DMARC, right? We've all received these emails, we've all done something, or we've heard of something, or we've read in the media of someone who clicked a link or paid some money and that person got taken for a ride and paid some money into the wrong bank account. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but the biggest threat facing South Africa, specifically from a impersonation perspective, is in the housing market, right? You're about to pay a deposit into a trust because you want to put a deposit down. What a threat actor has done is exploited a person that works at one of the conveyancers and asked them for that specific set of email correspondence between yourself and the conveyancer. What they then do is send you an email that says all the things that you've seen before and you've communicated with at a time you expect that email, with the attachment that's obviously been altered. Now, when I talk about awkward conversations, when you speak to that conveyancer and go, have you received my money? And they say no, who's responsible, right? Is it you who didn't verify? Is it the company that didn't take care of your security interests? That's an awkward conversation. I'm married. I know exactly what an awkward conversation is. These are more awkward than those, right? So these sometimes are often avoidable by something as simple and as uncovered like DMARC, which is what I hope to present to you today. You'll see a QR code. We'll touch on this later in the presentation, but this will show you a very simple domain impersonation. And you'll see how easy and quickly, if an online application can do this, what kind of access a threat actor has when doing this to their unsuspecting victims. Now, guys, I think Sendmarc, what we stand for, and as cliche as this sounds when I present the slide, I think after COVID, the world needs cliches, right? We were thrown into unprecedented times, and the world of cybersecurity has become just as unprecedented, right? And what's really facing the world is that, and one of my colleagues that I previously worked with, put this so perfectly, is that we are, protecting ourselves with second generation technology against seventh generation attackers. All right. Now let that sink in for a bit, right? Imagine the Industrial Revolution, how powerful that was, 60 to 70 years ago. Imagine using those tools in today's world, right? You wouldn't be efficient. You wouldn't be as scalable. You wouldn't be as quick to innovate. And those kinds of things are really, really oppressing our security infrastructures, right? There's lots of things that people have to go and investigate. There's a new cybersecurity player every single day, and I've got to do this one, and I've got to overlap on these two services, and that becomes very overwhelming for customers because there's a cost involved, there's implications in terms of downtime, there's configuration misconceptions, etc. And for us, it's very simple, right? The more people that adopt DMARC, the less people can be spoofed. And where it really hits the road is the fact that this creates a community safety net, because the more people that consume DMARC, the less people can be spoofed by those domains, meaning that as more DMARC is adopted, the world gets less and less susceptible to becoming impersonated or, in terms of domain spoofing. So it's a very powerful vision that we go after at Sendmarc, and it's something that all of us at Sendmarc really believe in, as cliche as it sounds.
Dwayne, before you move off, I mean, for those that are not tech
Sure.
savvy, maybe you just want to unpack spoofing a little bit while you've touched on the subject.
Absolutely. So spoofing is kind of the impersonation play, right? So this is something that a hacker can do, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, more in depth. But in fact, anyone can spin up a server on any continent that mimics your domain if the right protocols aren't in place, right? And as technical as that sounds, think of a person with an internet access in, I can't name a country without being offensive, so in country X, and that country allows anyone to create a domain, right, on a specific set of servers. Now, even though that domain is purchasing it outside of yours, you can literally use that server to send emails from a domain that's active, but even though it's not you. And all you are doing is making the consumer back in the home country of the person you are attacking believe that he's actually chatting to the authenticated sender, which of course it's not. Now, this problem is completely exacerbated by the fact that there's no second checks, there's no authentication checks on domain purchases. Today, you can go buy a domain, any domain in the world, for $75 a year. It can look exactly like Mint Group, it can look exactly like Sendmarc, and no one does anything to check that. That in and of itself just exacerbates the problem for us as businesses, because it's just so freely open for anyone to kind of take that on as an opportunity to fraud people. And it leads me to this, right? Like, the last thing I want to do is make you aware of stats that you're already aware of, right? Email was never built and designed for what is happening today. I've been in email, specifically security for email, for the last 15 years. And every day I speak to someone who goes, email will be dead in 5 years. Still not dead, still growing by 10 to 15% year on year. And I think it's about 340 to 360 billion work emails are sent every single day. There's not even a 10th or a 20th of people alive in the world right now. So it shows you how massively scaled this problem is, right? It's the reason why 9 out of 10 cybercrime beginning points of attacks start with email. That's the first step, right? And I'll get to a slide where I speak about this specifically in the coming presentation, because really what's touched on this is the fact that it starts with email. And that is a massively operative sentence. It starts with email because ultimately at the end of this, I don't want to say light at the end of the tunnel, because it's not so much light for us, but it always ends with something bigger, and it's become a magic trick. There's sleight of hand in this, and I think DMARC plays a significant role in uncovering, in protecting, and making sure that we are at least aware of the things going on in our domains. So guys, with that preamble, I like talking about reasons to care. I call it the so what mantra. You know, Dwayne, you're saying a lot of things, but so what? And I think the reasons we should care, not just you guys or, you know, Mint or any business out there, but the reasons we should care is that there's a very real problem. It's very real for businesses with an outcome that's not specifically, you know, a potential. It's almost a certainty nowadays with the scale that AI tools have given us and the fact that we can learn about thousands of businesses in seconds. You know, those kinds of problems are making it really problematic. And the last point, John, the reasons to care that I think it's worth fixing, and the customers we speak to think the same, right? There's an insignificant cost. There's no negative downtime on your email infrastructure. It all happens on the DNS. So those three things really make a perfect, I don't want to say storm because it's in the wrong context, but it's allowing customers to realize, well, this is not as bad as I thought it was, even with all those complex acronyms and, you know, things that are so technical. And then from our side with Mint, you know, there's a couple of things that we can do that will provide you with a very brief overview, however in-depth as it can be, to show you where your vulnerabilities lie, right? We've got a scoring algorithm that we've built in our platform. You stick your domain onto it, and in 2 weeks, we can say, we've given you this score. The reason why is because these three things that are critically vulnerable need to be addressed. And it's a really intricate and comprehensive view of where we sit today and what our future could look like.
Dwayne, while you're on that subject, I mean, I think Sue posted the link to see whether whether the audience is vulnerable in terms of their business, and I think that's the stuff that we want to talk about, right? So ideally, you know, taking that domain, adding it into our reporting analysis, and we're able to then provide the customer some invaluable feedback around whether they're vulnerable and how we can ease their pain around that.
Absolutely. And great points. And we'll touch on that further in what that looks like. But I think absolutely, like there is now the link in the chat. Go and stick your domain in as we speak along. And yeah, if you have any questions on what this utilizes, feel free to let us know. So guys, I've spoken about this, right? There's a big problem in email, and the problem is it's scaled, right? Every business uses email, whether it be Microsoft, Gmail, Google, it doesn't really matter. Lotus Notes, I hope no one's on Lotus Notes here. But if they are, that's also okay. But there's a massive problem, right? With billions and billions of emails being sent every day, you know, threat actors are saying that, like, well, if 300 billion emails are being sent, there's a virtually endless or infinite amount of vulnerabilities I can take care of, right? I can impersonate people. I can intercept email and make it look like me. And each one of these have a number of protocols which, you know, when I speak to customers, I try and speak at the business level, not really so much like, have you got SPF or DKIM implemented? And the CIO goes, what the hell is either of those things? And I know what the protocol is, but what does it mean, right? So do you know if anyone is signing your email? Do you know if anyone's impersonating or tampering with your email? No. Okay, well, those protocols protect that, and they ultimately lead to DMARC conformance. And DMARC conformance is essentially your email server's way of telling the world, this is me, this is authentically me, and you can accept this email. It's not someone pretending to be me, because you take all the steps to ensure that your email and the third parties that are similarly sending email on your behalf are not being spoofed. And I'll touch on that in the next one, because I think that's a vitally important thing that people often overlook. Now, I thought, other than having everyone look at my cheesy photo in my signature, is to make this real for us that are attending here today. And again, thank you for joining on a Wednesday at lunchtime. But a spoof example is only an example when it's made real, right? And when you know, you've been in email and cybersecurity as long as I have, and I'm sure many of you on the call, without context or without the reality of what this could look like, it's very hard to distill down into, like, what does this actually mean from a business aspect, or how does this actually affect me? So today I wanted to use myself and Mo as an example, right? Like, we hope that we are, providing you with entertaining content and that the stuff is really landing and the message is good. And if it is, want some of you to log on to LinkedIn after this and say, wow, I just received the most expert discussion around deep, just kidding. But you can do that if you want. But what threat actors are doing, guys, and ultimately this breeds into social media, this breeds into everything we do online. It's written in ink and it's there forever, and people can review it at any stage with open source tools that allow them to review the stuff. So I'm going to pick on someone here today, right? So Tanya, for example, goes after this and sends a LinkedIn message to all of her connections about this amazing webinar she's just had today. And knowing that the threat actors are looking, they can go look at that domain, and they can look at Mint's domain, and Mint is protected, by the way, so Mint's a bad example, but they could very quickly identify that Mint doesn't have the required capability around DMARC, and they can send a spoof thank you to Tanya for specifically saying on LinkedIn how she loved this. And this word of thanks can include an attachment, it can include a link to a survey, it can be anything. But the reality is that the threat actor now has one critical piece of information, and that's called context, right? We will most likely be sending thank yous to everybody, right? We will most likely be saying there's something in return for this domain analysis, etc. And what's really dangerous there is that they can use that context and your expectation to generate urgency, meaning that within seconds you click on the link, you've downloaded some malware to your machine, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. So that's how these things permeate. These are the most successful attacks. And believe me, guys, having access to my previous business's emails, about 60 billion ransomware, malware infected mails went through that gateway every single day. 60 billion, okay? That's one email gateway in the world. That's giving you the kind of size of the problem, right? So be careful. Please still say thank you on LinkedIn. Mint is protected and there will be no unauthenticated mail coming to you. But again, it's to paint the picture in the reality. Now, this is ultimately where I quickly want to discuss like email sending. And again, I'm not going to go into technical because I would hate to bore you at lunchtime on Wednesday. But ultimately, just quickly, email delivery is very, very simple in its entirety, right? Your senders are sending email using a multitude of tools, whether you've got Mimecast or just Microsoft or Mimecast or Proofpoint, or it doesn't really matter. Your mails are being sent either directly from yourself to your end user or your supply chain, or they're going through a third-party service like Microsoft to do some email sanitization. They're going through Mimecast to strip any potential spoofing, etc. But what's really happened is ultimately many businesses either find themselves not yet able to move to a big third party like Microsoft or Mimecast or any other service. So they use open source tools to send emails. And Google and Yahoo, which is the crux of this whole webinar, have started stamping down on just sending a bunch of email just because the world has become so bad around the sheer volume of threats attacking businesses today. So what Google and Yahoo have basically stamped out is if you send more than 5,000 emails per day to a Gmail address, you will automatically be blocked and those mails will be rejected, right? There was a leak in from here. So this went from February to April and then from April again to the 1st of June, where they are just literally rejecting. Now, Google's a massive organization. Yahoo is a massive organization. They don't have the bandwidth and the manpower to phone every single customer and say, oh, out of those 5,000 emails you sent all your prospective customers, 4,998 were rejected. Sorry about that, right? So the customer's left in the lurch, paying for marketing tools like SendGrid or MailChimp or whatever, and it's going, delivered. But the reality is that those mails are either delivered to the spam or junk folder or never delivered at all and rejected straight. Now, pause there for a second and think about this from a retail or a customer acquisition perspective. We spoke to one of the largest groups yesterday around bicycles. I took the meeting because I'm an avid cyclist, and how do you know someone's an avid cyclist? Well, they'll tell you. And I literally spoke to the customer, said, you sent your marketing email out on Monday, which was around this new special coming this week. Here's where the mail ended up, and it's in my junk folder. Now, if you're sending that to 20, 30,000 of your subscribers, and people can't see the special coming up on Thursday, which I was very glad I saw. But anyway, like my example holds true. There's 15 to 19,000 people that will never see that, and that really impedes any marketing ROI, right? One person buys a bicycle, DMARC is paid for. 10 people buy a bicycle, DMARC is paid for, marketing ROI is up, and everyone wins, right? And I'll talk about the email value chain in a little bit, but there's not just email and security people that need to be thinking about DMARC. There's a far wider reaching audience that I think really, really makes this a successful project.
Dwayne, before you move off, there's a question from Walter. If you want to just address it quickly, if you don't mind. And
Sure.
he's asking, isn't 5,000 a big number for Yahoo and Gmail to start flagging?
Oh, 5,000 is it's a massive number, like, I mean, it's, I don't know what Malta, if you mean that, is it too big or is it too little? But the reality is that most businesses that really are sending bulk email traditionally will have a massive customer list, right? So if they're not there now, they're going to get there soon. So they had to start somewhere. And I think 5,000 was just the starting point. I think, Mo, what's more important than this, and I think we discussed this last week, is that this is the starting point of millions of regulatory bodies and businesses that have started putting pressure on us as consumers to start taking this seriously. And what I foresee in the next coming months is that multiple big giants, Microsoft included, will start being a little bit more aggressive on how they actually tackle this. But I think just Google and Yahoo coming out with a specific and required set of standards or kind of adherences is the first step. And this will obviously like iterate over time. So it's a good question. But I think it's just kind of, let's do something rather than just go, okay, well, DMARC's just, if they don't have it, like, well, too bad, like I think the fact that they started there was good.
Thanks, Brian.
Cool. And then, guys, we've spoken, we've added the link, and this is something that I wanted to touch on now, which we'll get into. So either scan this QR code or punch in the link that Sugeshni's very kindly added for us. But what this will give you the opportunity to do is, oops, let me go to the right screen, is see one of the impersonation demonstrations we do, right? So what it'll ask you is to stick in a business email that you guys obviously operate through. It'll ask you for another address, and hopefully you've all got a personal Yahoo, Hotmail, Gmail account. And then what it'll do is it'll look through your domains, kind of, I'm trying to get the words here. It'll come to me, but it's going to look at the configuration of your domain and identify if can you be spoofed. And if it can, you will receive to your personal email a spoof from yourself, from your business domain. Now, again, pausing here, what this will hopefully reflect to you guys is the fact of how easy this is. This is the tool that we've obviously protected and made sure that it's never going to be in the wrong hands. But if this can happen within a 30-second demo, imagine what threat actors can do at absolute scale, right? I could jump onto the dark web using a tool browser or whatever. I can go buy a mailing list for any business I think I would like to attack. I could then just go fire off emails to them and find some context on each of them, right? I know, this person likes cycling. I know that person likes online shopping. And these things are exacerbated by specific seasonal events. Black Friday, Christmas shopping, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day. All these things come into the play. Last year we saw a massive net florist email campaign go out via a third party. And who knows how many people got caught with that, right? Click here for 50% extra discount. People are buying on a site that looks exactly the same as the NetFlorist site. Meanwhile, it's just a complete carbon copy. And when you check out and hopefully get your money back or get your flowers to your loved ones, it never comes. And who do you hold accountable for that? Right? Someone just copied their website. It's not NetFlorist's fault. It's the threat actor. But again, now you've got that awkward conversation between customer and service provider. And guys, what that'll do is while the domain impersonation is happening on your end, we'll formulate a score using our proprietary algorithm, which tells us what's missing from your DNS, right? And you'll get a 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 5 for some of you if you have already implemented DMARC. But ultimately, what that will tell yourself and us and whoever you're sharing the report with is where your vulnerability lies, right? Do I have DKIM in place? Do I have SPF in place? Do I have both in place? Does that help me with my DMARC conformance? And where am I on the journey? Remember, a lot of domains are sending things on your behalf, your CRMs, your ERPs, etc., not just to you, but to customers. And I think in the next few slides, I'd like to explain exactly where this thing goes down. Now, I'm definitely not going to sit here and talk about the damage, even though that's exactly what the slide says. I think we are all very familiar and very adult enough to know that cybersecurity, if I do nothing about it, there are consequences. Now, you'll read FBI reports and Verizon Business and, a multitude of publications that say it's so bad and the average cost of a data breach is $1 trillion. Geez, I don't think many businesses turn over $1 trillion, right? And it's all based on things that we can measure and things that are quantifiable, like the average man hours to, quell an attack, etc. I'm not saying forget all that. All those things are important. Cybersecurity landscape is dangerous and things are happening at a lightning speed and it's crazy. But what we see, and when we think about the damage, is that they are far less singular in terms of the way in which they attack our businesses, right? It's not just about distribution of ransomware. It's not just about reputational damage anymore. It's now a chronological set of events. And if you remember from our earlier discussion, that sleight of hand, email is just the beginning, right? I'm sending Mo an email that says, please do this. As he does that, I've now got some confidence that he's believing in my discussion. I'm then asking Mo to do something second to that, which I might drop a piece of ransomware. I might ask him to do something later that week. And all of these things continuously happen until I identify as Mo. Shouldn't really say it that way. I steal his theft, and now I steal his theft. Wow. I steal his identity, and now I am Mo. And now I've got access to all of Mo's customers, and I'm sending them emails going, hey, look, here's your invoice for this month. Here's your latest updates around cybersecurity. Here's your anything. And all of a sudden, people are communicating with the wrong Mo and giving sensitive information back to that threat actor. So the kind of level of the slide is to illustrate that it's not just about one thing anymore. There's multiple things that threat actors are going through. And again, tools that are openly available on the internet, especially with large language models. Like you could literally write into GPT, how would I hypothetically go and launch a global cyber attack? And it will paint these pictures out for you, which is scary, but YouTube's got just as many videos.
Well, I know you didn't want to dive into the detail, right? But I mean, it's interesting to read that 25% of the businesses that were ransomware over the last 5 years actually closed down if they paid the ransom. And in information like that is actually quite important when you're not protected and you're able to be vulnerable in terms of a scenario like that, which sometimes is out of your control. But I mean, in large cases, you can more than likely protect yourself to a degree.
Absolutely. And I mean, ransomware is probably the most pervasive thing still going on, right? Phishing will never die until there's something that overtakes it, right? And I remember if anyone was, around in cybersecurity when WannaCry or NotPetya hit, I'll never forget the day that happened. I'll never, ever forget it. I was in Croatia with a bunch of my friends and we all worked for our previous company and we just started getting phone calls like crazy, like it was lunacy. Like I'm talking like 50 or 60 phone calls an hour going like, am I protected? What's going to happen? And I remember that frantic, try and block this thing. And then NotPetya happened a week or 2-3 months later. And the whole world was kind of like, oh yeah, we made it through the first one. And that's scary. Right? So it's like COVID. The world went into disarray. Like what happens again? Nothing much. We survived COVID. Oh, people got affected by it. That's okay. But like generally speaking, we're okay. And to your point, that's exactly what people see with cybersecurity. This next big thing happens, we survive it. Y2K happens, we survive it. And then the next big thing's like, we'll be okay. And that's just such a dangerous line to walk on because we shouldn't be just going, yeah, it's okay. Like we can survive it again. And because these things will evolve and become more intricate and with a higher success rate, and that's just a dangerous game to play with the threat actor kind of landscape that's just evolving daily. So just on that, Mo raises a great point here. Like, so how does this all work? Well, oftentimes customers protect their employees and their domains, right? They protect the castle. They build 2-meter-long walls. They've got big electric fencing. They've got cameras, which are your perimeter defense, your monitoring, etc. It's all this largely the same thing of how we protect our homes, especially in South Africa. But the problem is that we forget a lot of the services send email on our behalf, and even to people outside of our networks, right? Think of Monday.com, for example. almost every single career page you go to on any website, on any job portal, goes to monday.com. And when you apply, the email comes from the customer, but it's not coming from them. That mail is coming from monday.com on behalf of, which is a third party legally spoofing your domain in order to do a business process. But as the nature of the internet's become more and more distributed, cloud has exploded, everyone's got a point solution for everything. And now you've gone from having hybrid 365 to cloud 365, and now I'm okay. But now you've got Salesforce, you've got an ERP like SAP on top of that. You've got all these other things on top of that are sending mail to your customers, your partners, invoicing happens from there. And hackers are taking advantage of that. Forget your domain. Forget it completely. They're going after the SAP that's sending people the invoice at the right time on the 27th of every single month by buying the domain list from the dark web. That's how simple this stuff is. And if DMARC isn't in place on those third parties, it's effectively not telling the universe that, for example, this is coming from Sendmarc, right? This is coming from, your company name. It's not telling them that, meaning that it lays open to all these services being vulnerable and taking charge of your customers' payments. Now, a real example here is with a hospital group from Australia a couple of months ago, where they took advantage of the third-party software. They didn't use the spoofing. The invoices would come right from, like a medinvoice.com.au. And everyone was receiving the invoice. And the invoice was exactly the same, except the banking details had changed. And the hacker took a chance by sending an email prior to the invoice going out. We are updating our email, we are updating our banking details. Please ring to verify before making any payments. I'm a unique citizen. I'm careful. I'm going to phone this number. Hello, Mo, is your bank details changing? I'm the hacker. Yes, absolutely it is, but don't worry, you can trust it. And there it starts, right? So who do we trust? I don't want to say nobody, but you get the sense that this is a lot more intricate than it used to be, and that's a problem in and of itself. So again, I'm not going to speak too much to the slide. I think what I mentioned in the previous slide is exactly this. Existing protection, we're not talking about replacing and ripping out that, right? We've got things that protect our inbound. We've got things that protect our outbound, things like anti-spam, anti-URL rewriting, etc. What this protects is the awkward conversation between you and your customers and your supply chain. I received an invoice from you and I paid it. Did you get my money? Nope. Well, that came from a fraudulent or spoofed domain. But what DMARC really solves, and this is where we'll begin wrapping up, is a number of things for a number of people. But I want to paint a very simple picture because I promised to keep it high level. There's two things it does. It protects email security and the foundations of your security framework for your DNS. So things like authentication of your mail, things like policies and visibility and all that stuff. But it also protects and enhances email deliverability. And this is often not heard by the security team that we discuss it with, or when I talk about DMARC, people don't often see it as this. But from a reputation perspective, this stuff is absolute, right? You can authenticate into your customers and say to them, this is an email, we use DMARC, and email coming from our domain is authentic, legitimate, and can be trusted. There's also the marketing performance that it impacts, right? If you guys are using SendGrids or MailChimps or any other marketing third party, this is making sure that the mail statistics on those platforms are enriched because mails are actually delivered to the inbox rather than the junk folder or being rejected worse off. And that's important, right? Because when we think about how those two specific areas of business, deliverability and email security, impact the people in your value chain. And when I talk about email's value chain, it's kind of these three people, right? These three people in your businesses want massively different things from everything, from security services to the way in which you guys purchase coffee. It doesn't matter, but it has different functions to different people. Security leaders don't care. Sorry if I'm offending anyone, because sometimes they do care. But security leaders don't largely care about open and click rate and ROI because they've got so much on their plate. But marketing leaders don't care about phishing protection. I mean, I'm not saying don't care as a general statement. I'm saying it's like their lines are very clearly drawn in terms of the KPIs and the roles and the responsibilities. Finance leaders are the same. They worry about regulatory compliance and they want to make sure that, am I spending and what am I getting in return? Right? And return is important for all three of these people. And that's why working together when speaking about a DMARC project, for us specifically when speaking to customers big and small, is yes, Mo, as the IT director at Company X, it's great to see you, but let's bring in a marketing person. Let's bring in a finance person. Let's understand, like, there's certain things that they also need to be satisfied. And we can make sure that there's 12 things at a minimum here that speak to each of those personas. Now, of course, regulatory, we've spoken about Gmail, we've spoken about Yahoo. There's a number of businesses and regulatory bodies and legislations that have been written around the world that endorse and specify DMARC conformance, right? And South Africa is not immune to this becoming one of a very few serious legislations coming out in the coming months. And one of the biggest for us is PCI and DSS, right? So we've got lots of companies who do online retail, who store credit cards, manage credit cards. And the credit card fraud is a game that we can't even comprehend the size of, right? Because it's one of the easiest ways and easiest scams to go and execute as a threat actor. But not having these things in place at a bare minimum, businesses are going to start failing, certain compliance and regulation requirements. And when that happens, think of cyber insurance not being paid out. Think of what effect that has to your business's reputation. And this becomes really, really interesting from a compliance and a business operations perspective. So, yeah, I can see you.
Yeah, Dwayne, while you're on the subject of PCI, I mean, you've spoken about the compliance around this, right? But can you dive deeper into the deadlines PCI compliance has regarding DMARC and the authentication around that? And you've spoken briefly about how retailers will be affected, but ultimately, what does it mean for them?
Yeah, so great question. So I think this will, these dates seem to, sneak up on us, just like the Google and Yahoo stuff did. We had April, it was like, oh, we'll get there. And then we're like, we're going to reject email on the 1st of June. Yeah, it's okay, we'll get there. Now it's the 15th almost of August, and we're still hearing the same thing. So PCI is a lot more regulated. There's no black and white or gray area. It's on this date, and I believe it's the 1st of March next year. And then there will be, the general kind of conformance layers to that. What it has, in terms of an impact for customers is that, I found that a lot of these things, they happen over a period of time. I've got to get to it. I've got to get to it. And by the time you've gotten around to it, it's too late. It doesn't really matter. And it's just by chance that at that exact same time, something will happen to the business where someone's paid a fraudulent invoice and it's like, oh my gosh, now what? Oh, it's fine. We've got cyber insurance. Cyber insurance goes, are you PCI compliant in terms of all these things? Absolutely. Do you have DMARC in place? No. Okay, well, then we can't pay your cyber insurance claim. And whether that's 20,000, 50,000, 100 million, it doesn't really matter. What matters is when these things scale out. Now, a great example of this is a friend of mine. It's a crazy example, but he's got a big roofing business down here in Cape Town, okay? And every month, about 2 to 3 million of fraudulent invoices get paid out to suppliers because someone is stealing, and spoofing his domain and basically sending out invoices to his customers. And like he found out about this and said, what is going on here? Where's the payments? Like, you've been great for 20 years. What's going on? No, we've paid them. Here's the proof. Here's the proof of payment. And it's like, well, we didn't get the money. And all of a sudden he found out he was being spoofed. So suffice it to say, is now a Sendmarc customer. Thank goodness. But the reality is that, guys, if they're going after roofing business, like, I mean, that just blew my mind when he explained this to me. So we got in there. But the repercussion is, again, that awkward conversation and a potential that your cyber insurer just says, nope, you didn't adhere to this. And for the insignificant cost that DMARC costs, and this, guys, I realize I'm saying this, an insignificant cost is that's subjective, Dwayne, that's relative to every customer. Mo knows what Sendmarc and DMARC specifically, the conformance cost to implement. It's quick, it's easy, it's off your email service, it happens in the DNS. And when I say it's a non-offensive pricing model, I can't stress enough that, like, in terms of what people are spending for cybersecurity and just tooling in general, this is like not even a couple of % of that. And that's where, again, complexity breeds the fact that it's expensive. And it's like, that's a weird thing for a lot of customers to hear. It's like, well, this is so complex and it's that price. Like, that seems like, why is no one taking it as a priority? And that's kind of why we wanted to kind of bring it to the attention of you guys. So guys, we work with partners like premier partners like Mint, to bring this evangelism of DMARC to the market, right? Like, yes, every vendor that you've ever spoken to is yes, this product will save your life and it's amazing. But for me personally, and kind of subjectively, having worked with multiple vendors over the last few, like large vendors over the last 2 years, what I love so much about DMARC is that it's one of the few cybersecurity services that does exactly what it says on the box, right? There's no massive configuration and managed service that needs to get you to Nirvana. It's simple, it's within 90 days, and you are ready to go and done. You'll understand exactly what your authorized senders are doing, what unauthorized senders are doing, from which countries, how many domains you've got protected, and what those domains are doing specifically. Within group companies, you can see it down to the specific group company being attacked. And we get this often. We've got large businesses with us who have multitudes of businesses, each with their own domain. And you'll see that like the primary domain is never touched, but all these sub businesses are touched, again, with that sleight of hand to go after the big fish, which is the group company. And these slow burn, right? These are 4 months burning candles. But without that deep, comprehensive visibility, let's be honest, guessing in the dark, right? Now, a lot of customers opt to do DMARC on their own, and absolutely more power to you, but it is insane. An XML report is generated there's five, or well, it depends on the email, but depending on the chain of the email, it's 3 to 5 XML reports that get generated per email. You guys can do a quick workout. On average, everyone gets 20 business emails per day. Work out how big your company is, multiply that by 3. Okay, that's the difference. Now that goes to dwayne.nickel@sendmarc.com. Your poor IT manager has got to look through these reports. We're talking in the region of hundreds of thousands of reports. How do you make sense of that? Unless
well, Dwayne, that's assuming that someone actually looks at that mailbox, right, or looks at the information, right?
Well, Mo, obviously they do, right? IT people aren't busy. There's not connectivity or phone issues or like lots of other things going on. They got loads of free time. So yeah, unless you are fluent in Matrix, like XML reports are virtually impossible to drive value into any form of pattern recognition. And I think also, you've made a great point, which leads me to the next slide, which is why we've got the way in which we do our services into our customer base, right? So Sam, our founder, is he wants to provide value before making anyone feel like they're making a decision too hastily. And Mo and ourselves have done this with many customers, right? We do an analysis, right? And that analysis is zero cost, and it provides you with in-depth insight into what exactly is going on in your domain. How are your domains protected? Which ones are getting attacked from which countries, which IP ranges, all that information. And we use our engineers to provide you with a 30-minute discussion on this is what's going on your domain. Well, we think with that kind of implementation, at least if we shake hands and walk away and go, Sendmarc's not for us, we can say, well, we've added value. We've shown you specifically what's going on in your domains and how you can quell those vulnerabilities. What I think we do well is moving forward from that is we've got a premium approach to all of our customers, right? All of our customers receive a service that implements Sendmarc expertly, and we guarantee a P equals reject within 90 days, right? We've seen people do this themselves over 2-3 years. We've seen people do this with other vendors where it takes 18 months. We don't want that. We know that we are hyper focused on DMARC specifically, and we want our customers to realize the value as quickly as possible. And we work with Mint and work with the customer directly in ensuring that this process happens. And on average, we're a lot quicker than 90 days. But it's really great that this project can be written off in a couple of months, and we are gaining the value of DMARC for our customers, our supply chain, and ultimately our partners. And then, guys, before we wrap up, I think why Mint believes in DMARC and why we love partnering with partners like Mint is because obviously we share a commonality around the importance of bringing viable solutions that don't offend or make people believe that it's keep spending. The reality is that DMARC is an important asset to businesses that drives a lot of ROI which it can help a certain amount of personas within the business. Security leaders, it helps you identify and put a stop to people impersonating your domain. Finance people, it helps them identify and uncover regulations, compliance requirements, etc. And marketing people, it helps uncover things like, is my marketing tools actually getting the most out of this, or do I need something like DMARC that will take this further? And doing that with our vision, which is these 5 things here. But ultimately, it's what we call our 3 Ps. Yep, we've got some more cliches for you. It's our people, our promise, and our platform. Right? Our people are ridiculously expert at DMARC implementation. That's why we're the only vendor in the world that guarantees a pre-90-day P equals reject status. And that's part of our promise. Right?
Dwayne, do you want to go into that a little bit more? So the 90-day period for P equals reject, I mean, we understand what that means, right? But I mean, if we don't get to that within 90 days, what does it mean to the customer?
Okay, so great question. So every customer that's either got a DMARC record on their DNS already will either be in P equals none or P equals quarantine. Okay, so P equals none is basically, I've got a DMARC record, but I have no idea because Dwayne, my IT manager, can't read through XML reports fast enough, right? It's telling the globe, you can trust everything from me because we don't actually know what's going on. From a P equals quarantine perspective, that's like, yes, these are typically dangerous emails, but instead of just rejecting them, stick them into the spam folder or into a junk folder. So it's telling the world to be careful of these emails if they don't come from you, but you can't be sure. And that's typically where the project lags. And then P equals reject is that magical utopic state. That's the Sendmarc.com domain has been scanned, and it's protected, and it's got all its DMARC, SPF, and DKIM records in place, and you can trust email from any of these trusted services that Sendmarc has allowed as authorized senders. Now, not being in reject is basically the same as not having a DMARC record in most cases. It leaves you vulnerable to backdoors and certain things that threat actors can do. And what we want to do is work with customers, understanding which third parties are sending email on your behalf, and it'll be all the normal culprits, right? A mail marketing platform, things like a third party like Mimecast, Proofpoint, Tessian, Microsoft is generally there, but there's lots more that'll come in. And we uncovered 2 things there. Is there shadow marketing / shadow IT, that you have things sending domains on your behalf that are just going out to the open world that no one knows about? So we hope to identify and allow you to observe that. But secondarily, we quell those ones, right? If it's coming from those and it's not us, we don't authorize them. So you physically list your authorized senders to us, and we make sure before changing from P equals quarantine to P equals reject that we are ready to do so. And once we do reject, only that list of authorized senders can send email on your company's domain, your company domains on behalf of them. Otherwise, everything else is straight rejected by Microsoft, Gmail, your customer services.
Thanks, Brad. Makes sense.
Cool. So, lastly, guys, if you have taken the QR code or the domain, I would implore you to reach out to Mint or us, and let's look at that domain analysis together, right? So it's completely free of charge. I hate saying zero obligation because I don't work for Verimark, but there is zero obligation. At the very least, it gives you insights into what exactly is going on in my domain, and can someone help me understand this information? And we've got lots of experts that'll jump on a 25-minute call. It's really not that technical. It's very eye-opening sometimes to see the data, but ultimately it'll give you two outcomes. The first is, have I got any unauthorized senders sending email number from my behalf, and where are they from? And secondarily, it'll give you a compliance percentage, which says that my email is being delivered X amount of times. Now, you can take your average order value of whatever it is that you guys do for services or goods, and you can say, well, if I'm sending 10,000 emails and I've only got a 20% compliance, there's a chance that 80% of those mails are landing up in my user's spam or junk folder, which means I can never really react and engage to my customer. So what does that mean for the business if an additional 8,000 emails are sent to the top of the user inbox? What if it's a 3% on average our click rate? What if 4% of those transact? What does that mean in measurable outcome? And oftentimes, DMARC is like 30x that by just selling one more customer one of your products or services. And that for me is a very, very, very valuable way of making a business case for DMARC's inclusion in your repertoire of weaponry in your security stack. So, guys, that's it from me. I know that's a lot of information for a Wednesday afternoon at lunchtime. I don't know if there's any questions, Mo, if you've got any additional questions. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you found value in that. And yeah, please reach out to Mint if you have any further questions or would like to see any deeper discussions around your domain analysis. We'd be very happy to help.
Yeah, Dwayne. Thanks. I don't have anything from my side, but thank you for the informative discussion. I think it was an eye opener, hopefully to the audience. Sue, I don't know. I don't see any questions.
No, I think yeah, the Q&A section is clear, so we don't have any further questions. So maybe we can wrap up.
Super.
Yeah. So, I mean, guys, as we've heard today, threat actors are extremely sophisticated. We should definitely not be complacent. Thank you, Dwayne and Mo, for your insights. It's incredibly scary, but also super interesting at the same time. Thank you to everyone that joined today. If you haven't, please check your domain vulnerability by clicking on the link in the chat. And we promise it's a safe link. Oh, I think Zizi's got a question, but Zizi, maybe you can put it in the chat and we can answer your question. Or was it just a wave? Maybe a wave? No, it was a wave. It was a high five for the great content. Yeah, Walter says he's going to reach out for more information on that domain score. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us this webinar Wednesday. Follow us on LinkedIn for details on the next installation. And yeah, Zizi says it was a wave. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.